Do you remember these? The magical smiling sea monkeys advertised in the back of your favorite comic books. They promised a kingdom in a tiny plastic tank, an entire civilization of cheerful, crown-wearing creatures that would hatch right before your very eyes. And millions of kids begged their parents for them, absolutely captivated by the promise of instant life. But what if I told you that the cheerful characters were a deliberate, genius-level illusion, and that the man who created them was a marketing master with a deeply disturbing secret? This is the unbelievable true story of how the world's most famous instant pets were born from a brilliant idea and a dark ideology. Now, to understand sea monkeys, you first have to understand their creator, Harold von Braunhut. Yes, quite the name. And born in New York in 1926, von Braunhut was a prolific inventor and a master of marketing hyperbole. He was the mind behind other comic book novelties you might remember, like X-ray specs that promised to let you see through clothing, and invisible goldfish, which came with a bowl and food, but, yeah, you guessed it, no fish. Now, before he ever thought of instant pets, he was already an expert in illusion and bending reality. And the idea that would make him millions reportedly struck in 1957. So, while visiting a pet supply store, he noticed a bucket of brine shrimp, tiny crustaceans typically sold as live fish food. But where others saw fish food, von Braunhut saw potential. He saw instant pets that could bring a sense of wonder and a little bit of nature's weirdness to kids everywhere. Now, this wasn't just about selling a product, it was about selling a story, a fantasy that a kid could hold in their hands. So von Braunhut teamed up with a marine biologist, Anthony D'Agostino, to create the secret behind the magic. The creatures themselves were a special hybrid of brine shrimp, and these weren't your average shrimp. They were selectively bred to enter a state of suspended animation called cryptobiosis, allowing their eggs to lie dormant for years. But the real genius was in the packets. He and D'Agostino developed a process using a proprietary formula of chemicals and nutrients that, when added to regular tap water, would create the perfect habitat for the shrimp to hatch. And he even received a patent for this unique hatching process in 1972. Now, the exact contents of those packets remain a closely guarded trade secret to this day. Initially, he called his creation Instant Life, but retailers weren't interested. A similar product called Instant Fish had recently failed and nobody wanted to take the risk. So von Braunhut did what he did best. He pivoted. He decided to bypass the stores and market directly to his target audience, kids. Now, his new strategy was comic books. In 1964, he rebranded the product. Noticing the creatures' long, flowing tails, he called them sea monkeys. He then enlisted Joe Orlando, a legendary illustrator who would later become a vice president at DC Comics. Orlando drew the iconic images that would be burned into the minds of a generation. Smiling, humanoid creatures with crowns living in underwater castles. Now, these weren't just shrimp anymore. They were a civilization. The ads promised a bowl full of happiness, and kids were hooked. And at their peak, sea monkey ads appeared in over 300 million pages of comics every single year. Now, there was just one problem. For all the marketing magic, the product itself had a flaw. The tiny creatures rarely lived for more than a month, and this was a source of frustration for the kids who had bought into the fantasy of a long-lasting pet. But von Braunhut didn't just cash in and move on, he reinvested the profits back into research. He once again partnered with Anthony D'Agostino, and by the 1980s, they had developed super sea monkeys. Now, these were an even hardier hybrid, bred to grow bigger and live much, much longer, sometimes for up to 2 years, a crucial improvement that cemented the product's viability and ensured that the sea monkey kingdom could finally live up to its promise. If you're loving these trips down memory lane, join our totally rad membership for just $2.99 a month, and it helps us keep creating content you love. You'll get exclusive badges, emojis, early access to new videos, and shoutouts. Hit that join button to support the channel and keep the nostalgia alive. Thanks for being totally rad. So by the 1980s and 90s, sea monkeys were more than just a toy. They were a full-blown cultural icon. They reached their literal peak on October 29, 1998, when a packet of sea monkey eggs traveled to space with astronaut John Glenn on the Space Shuttle Discovery. And after 9 days in orbit, they returned to Earth, seemingly unaffected, and hatched 8 weeks later. Now, their fame even reached Hollywood. In 1992, comedian and actor Howie Mandel co-created and produced The Amazing Live Sea Monkeys, a live-action Saturday morning TV show on CBS. The show, which featured 3 human-sized sea monkeys navigating the world, was one of the most expensive children's programs ever produced at the time. It was a strange, ambitious project that ultimately failed to find an audience and was cancelled after only 11 episodes. Harold von Braunhut had built an empire on a foundation of childhood wonder. He had created a product that brought joy to millions. But behind the curtain of the whimsical sea monkey kingdom, the man pulling the strings was hiding a deeply disturbing secret. So, investigative journalism and court documents eventually revealed a shocking truth. Harold von Braunhut was a dedicated white supremacist. Though born Harold Nathan Braunhut to a Jewish family in New York, he reportedly changed his name to sound more Germanic and became an active supporter of extremist groups like the Aryan Nations. Owen Sewell, the fact-finding director to the Anti-Defamation League at the time, stated, "We've long been monitoring Harold von Braunhut. He's linked to some of the most extreme racist and anti-Semitic organizations in the country." The reports were damning. Von Braunhut had advertised one of his other inventions, a whip-like weapon, in the Aryan Nations newsletter, pledging a portion of the sales to the group's legal defense fund. And in one particularly chilling anecdote, it's reported he helped buy firearms for a Ku Klux Klan faction. The inventor of one of the world's most innocent pets was entangled in some of the nation's most hateful ideologies. The contrast was absolutely staggering. Harold von Braunhut died in 2003 at the age of 77, leaving his multi-million-dollar sea monkey empire to his second wife, Yolanda Signorelli von Braunhut. Yolanda, a former actress, inherited the company, transients, the vast Maryland estate the sea monkeys had built, and most importantly, the secret formula, which was kept under lock and key in a Manhattan vault. Now, having been with the company since the late 60s, Yolanda continued to run the business from her home, mixing the secret ingredients herself. But managing the entire global enterprise was a monumental task, and in 2007 she decided to license the brand to a distributor called Big Time Toys. The agreement was supposed to be clear. Big Time Toys would handle the packaging, marketing, and distribution, and in return, Yolanda's company, Transients, would supply the proprietary sea monkey eggs and nutrient packets, and she would receive 10% of gross sales royalties. The contract also included a crucial option. Big Time Toys could buy the entire sea monkey company outright for $10 million. Now, for a few years, the arrangement seemed to work, but in 2012, Big Time Toys suddenly stopped making royalty payments. Then came the bombshell. The company announced it considered its previous payments for the shrimp packets to be a layaway deal for the entire company, and as far as they were concerned, they now owned the Sea Monkey franchise. Yolanda was floored. And to make matters worse, court filings soon alleged that Big Time Toys had stopped using her proprietary, specially bred shrimp altogether. Instead, they had begun sourcing cheaper, generic brine shrimp from suppliers in China. The sea monkeys being sold in stores were no longer the super sea monkeys that Harold von Braunhut had spent years developing. In 2013, Yolanda filed a lawsuit for breach of contract and trademark infringement. Big Time Toys countersued, launching a bizarre legal argument. They claimed that von Braunhut's invention was an illusion because the underlying organism, brine shrimp, is a common species found worldwide and therefore couldn't be trademarked. A federal judge disagreed, allowing Yolanda's trademark claims to proceed. What followed was a grueling, years-long legal battle over the soul of the sea monkey kingdom. The case eventually settled after nearly 8 years of litigation, but the protracted legal fight had taken its toll, and by the time it was over, Yolanda was reportedly left in dire financial straits. According to some reports, while the mansion was still hers, she could no longer afford to heat it or pay for electricity, and was forced to live in just 2 rooms. All the while, sea monkeys, now often made with generic shrimp, continue to be sold in major retailers like Walmart under the control of Big Time Toys. So, the story of sea monkeys is a powerful reminder that behind our most cherished childhood memories often lie complex and sometimes disturbing truths. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden stories behind things you thought you knew, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.